For thousands of years, people have looked at the moon and asked the same question. What is its purpose? Modern astronomy tells us it is Earth's only natural satellite, a rocky world shaped by gravity, orbiting our planet every 27 days. But long before telescopes, long before astronauts, and long before modern science, an ancient Jewish text offered a very different description. Not of the moon's appearance, but of its role. Buried within the Book of Enoch is one of the most unusual astronomical passages to survive from the ancient world. It speaks of gates, measured cycles, appointed times, and an angel who explains the movements of the heavens in remarkable detail. For centuries, these chapters remained largely unknown outside Ethiopia. Then, in the 20th century, fragments of the same work were discovered among the Dead Sea Scrolls. That discovery changed the conversation. But it also raised an important question. What exactly does the Book of Enoch say about the moon? Does it describe astronomy, ancient symbolism, or something else entirely? Today, we're going to investigate the text itself. Not internet theories. Not modern speculation. We'll separate what the Book of Enoch actually says from the interpretations that have grown around it. Because those are not always the same thing. And once you see the difference, you may never read these chapters the same way again. Before we can understand the Book of Enoch's description of the moon, we first need to understand the book itself. For centuries, many people in Europe knew the Book of Enoch only through references made by early Christian writers. The complete text had largely disappeared from the Western world. That changed in the late 18th century when Scottish explorer James Bruce returned from Ethiopia with several Guizi manuscripts of the book. For the first time in centuries, European scholars could study the complete text again. Then came an even more remarkable discovery. In 1947, a Bedouin shepherd searching for a lost goat threw a stone into a cave overlooking the Dead Sea. Instead of hearing the sound of rock, he heard pottery shatter. Inside those caves were thousands of ancient manuscripts. Today, they are known as the Dead Sea Scrolls. Among them were fragments of the Book of Enoch, written in Aramaic, copied centuries before the birth of Jesus. These discoveries confirmed something historians had long suspected. The Book of Enoch was not a medieval invention. It was already circulating among Jewish communities during the Second Temple period. And hidden within those ancient manuscripts was a section unlike anything else in early Jewish literature. Modern scholars call it the Astronomical Book. Not because it resembles a modern astronomy textbook, but because it attempts to explain the movements of the sun, moon, and stars within the worldview of its time. This is where our investigation truly begins. The Book of Enoch contains more than 100 chapters. Yet only a small portion deals with the movements of the heavens. These chapters, numbered 72 through 82 in most editions, are known collectively as the Astronomical Book. They differ dramatically from the rest of Enoch. Here, there are no accounts of the watchers descending to earth. No descriptions of giants. No visions of judgment. Instead, the focus shifts upward to the heavens. According to the text, Enoch is guided by the angel Uriel. Unlike many biblical narratives where angels deliver brief messages, Uriel takes on a different role. He becomes a teacher. He explains the movements of the heavenly bodies, their appointed paths, their seasons, and the order established by God. This is an important detail. The text never presents the heavens as random. Everything moves according to an established order. An order that cannot be altered by human beings. Then, the narrative turns to the moon. This is where many modern discussions begin to diverge. Some claim the Book of Enoch describes the moon as an enormous machine. Others argue it presents an entirely symbolic vision. So what does the text actually say? One passage reads, "Its course is according to the ordinance of heaven, and its light is given to it by measure." Notice something immediately. The emphasis is not on the moon's composition. The text does not describe rocks, minerals, or a hollow interior. Instead, its attention is fixed on order, measurement, cycles, and appointed times. Again and again, Uriel explains that the heavenly bodies move according to fixed laws established by the Creator. The moon receives light. It follows its course. It marks seasons. It keeps its appointed order. These descriptions may sound ordinary today. But in the ancient world, they reflected a profound theological idea. The heavens were not viewed as chaotic. They were understood as part of an ordered creation. That distinction matters, because many modern discussions begin with interpretations, instead of the text itself. Before asking what the moon represents, or whether these passages contain hidden meanings, we first have to understand what Enoch is actually describing. And that's where things become even more interesting. Because Uriel doesn't stop with the moon itself. He begins describing something that has puzzled readers for centuries. The gates of heaven. If the moon's measured movements are unusual, the next part of Enoch's vision is even more extraordinary. As Uriel continues his tour of the heavens, he no longer focuses only on the sun and moon. Instead, he begins describing gates. Not one, not two, but 12. 6 in the east, 6 in the west. According to the Book of Enoch, these gates are the appointed places through which the heavenly lights appear and disappear during different seasons of the year. One passage explains that the sun rises through different eastern gates as the seasons change. Later, it returns through corresponding western gates. The moon follows its own appointed course. Everything moves according to a fixed order. At first glance, this sounds strange to modern readers. After all, we know the sun doesn't literally pass through gates in the sky. So what was Enoch describing? To answer that question, we have to step into the world of ancient cosmology. In the ancient Near East, people often described the heavens using architectural language. The sky could be portrayed as having foundations, windows, doors, or gates. The Hebrew Bible uses similar imagery. In the story of Noah's flood, Genesis speaks of the windows of heaven being opened. The Psalms describe God stretching out the heavens. The prophets sometimes speak of the heavens opening. This doesn't necessarily mean ancient writers believed there were giant physical doors suspended above the earth. Rather, they were describing heavenly order using language familiar to their own world. Imagine standing inside an enormous palace. Rooms are connected by doorways. Courtyards by gateways. Everything has an appointed entrance and exit. For the author of Enoch, the heavens function in much the same way. An ordered kingdom. Every luminary has its appointed path. Every season has its appointed time. Every movement follows a pattern established by God. That is the central idea. The emphasis is not chaos, but order. Yet this raises another fascinating question. If these gates describe the orderly movement of the heavens, why does Enoch spend so much time measuring them? Why record the precise movements of the sun and moon in such detail? To answer that, we must look at the purpose of the heavenly lights themselves. Because according to Enoch, they were never intended merely to illuminate the night. They were given to humanity to keep time. By this point in Enoch's journey, one thing has become unmistakable. The sun, the moon, and the stars are never described as existing without purpose. Every movement, every cycle, every season, every appearance on the horizon follows an appointed order. But why? Why would the Book of Enoch devote so much attention to celestial movements? The answer begins much earlier. In the opening chapter of Genesis. On the fourth day of creation, God appoints the sun and moon to serve as signs for seasons, and for days, and years. To a modern reader, that may sound like a simple description of time. But to ancient Israel, it meant far more. The heavens functioned as God's calendar. They marked harvests, festivals, Sabbaths, the changing of seasons. Life itself moved according to the rhythm of creation. The Book of Enoch expands on that idea. Again and again, Uriel emphasizes that the heavenly lights keep their appointed courses without deviation. Not because they possess power of their own, but because they obey the order established by the Creator. This is one of the astronomical book's central themes. The heavens are dependable because they reflect divine order. That may seem like a small point, but in the ancient world, it carried enormous significance. If the heavenly lights were reliable, then the calendar could be trusted. If the calendar could be trusted, then the appointed times of worship could also be trusted. This helps explain why calendars became such an important subject in the centuries before Jesus. Different Jewish communities disagreed over how sacred time should be measured. Some followed primarily lunar calendars. Others favored solar systems. The community at Qumran, the same community associated with the Dead Sea Scrolls, appears to have preserved a 364-day calendar reflected in the Book of Enoch. For them, this wasn't merely an astronomical debate. It was a theological one. If worship was meant to follow God's appointed times, then keeping the correct calendar mattered. Whether or not one agrees with their conclusions, their dedication to preserving these writings tells us something important. They believed the order of creation reflected the order of its Creator. And that brings us to one of the biggest misunderstandings surrounding the Book of Enoch. Many modern videos suggest that Enoch was describing advanced technology hidden in the heavens. But is that really what the text says? Or are we reading modern ideas into an ancient worldview? To answer that, we need to examine one of the most debated passages in the entire astronomical book. The verse that speaks of the moon's chariot. As Uriel continues explaining the movements of the heavens, Enoch describes the moon using language that has fascinated readers for centuries. One passage states, "Its chariot on which it rides is driven by the wind, and light is given to it by measure." At first glance, that sentence sounds extraordinary, especially to a modern audience. After all, the moon doesn't ride in a chariot, nor is it literally pulled through the sky by the wind. So what did Enoch mean? Before answering, we need to remember something important. Ancient writers often described the natural world using the language of their own culture. Kings traveled in chariots. Messengers rode in chariots. Victorious warriors returned in chariots. To describe movement, a chariot was one of the most familiar images available. The Hebrew Bible uses similar poetic language. In Psalm 104, God is described as making the clouds his chariot. No one imagines the clouds are literally a wooden vehicle. The image communicates movement, majesty, and divine authority. The Book of Enoch may be using similar imagery. The moon follows its appointed course as though riding in a heavenly chariot. The emphasis is on ordered movement, not mechanical engineering. Yet this passage has inspired a wide range of interpretations. Some readers understand the language symbolically. Others believe it reflects an ancient cosmological model. And still others see it as preserving a worldview in which heavenly bodies were understood as being guided by angelic beings carrying out God's commands. The text itself does not explain which interpretation is correct. Instead, it leaves us with a vivid image. A moon that never wanders from its appointed course. Never arrives early. Never arrives late. Always moving according to the order established by the Creator. Perhaps that's why Uriel spends so much time explaining these movements to Enoch. Not to satisfy human curiosity, but to reveal something about God's character. In Enoch's vision, creation is not random. It is ordered, reliable, purposeful. And every movement in the heavens reflects that deeper reality. But then, Uriel introduces another detail. One that has puzzled readers even more than the chariot itself. He begins describing how the moon receives, and loses, its light. As Enoch's journey continues, Uriel shifts the focus once again. This time, not to where the moon travels, but to how it appears to change. Night after night, the moon grows brighter, then dimmer. Then it disappears. To most of us, it's a familiar sight. But to Enoch, it was something that required explanation. The Book of Enoch describes the moon receiving its light, by measure. It speaks of increasing and decreasing portions, appointed phases, and a carefully ordered cycle. To the ancient observer, this wasn't simply an interesting pattern. It was evidence of design. The heavens moved with consistency. Nothing appeared random. Every phase served a purpose. This may sound surprisingly familiar. Modern astronomy also describes the moon as passing through predictable phases. But the explanations are very different. Today, we understand those phases as the result of the moon's orbit around Earth and the changing angle at which sunlight illuminates its surface. The Book of Enoch, however, explains those changes through the language and cosmology of its own time. Its concern isn't physics as we understand it today. Its concern is order, measure, appointment. The moon never exceeds its boundaries. It never ignores its appointed course. Again and again, Uriel emphasizes that creation operates according to laws established by God. That may be the most important observation in the entire astronomical book. Because modern discussions often focus on extraordinary claims, while overlooking the book's central message. The moon matters. Not because it hides a secret civilization, or because it contains mysterious technology, but because, in Enoch's vision, it serves as a visible reminder that creation is governed by order rather than chaos. Even its changing light follows an appointed rhythm. And that rhythm points beyond itself to the wisdom of the Creator. Yet there is one final question. If the Book of Enoch is primarily concerned with order, why has it inspired so many extraordinary modern interpretations? Why do some readers see spacecraft, hidden chambers, or advanced technology in passages that others read symbolically? To answer that, we have to leave the ancient world and examine what happened when this remarkable book was rediscovered. By now, one thing has become clear. The Book of Enoch does not ask us to look at the moon merely as an object in the night sky. It asks us to see it as part of a larger order. Throughout the astronomical book, the moon is never presented as existing for its own sake. Its purpose is always connected to something greater. It marks seasons, measures time, maintains appointed cycles, and reflects the order established by its Creator. Whether one accepts the Book of Enoch as inspired scripture, an important work of Second Temple Judaism, or simply an ancient historical document, its message remains remarkably consistent. The universe is not portrayed as chaotic. It is portrayed as ordered. The movements of the heavens remind humanity that creation follows laws beyond human control. Kings rise. Empires fall. Calendars change. Civilizations disappear. Yet the heavens continue their appointed course. Perhaps that is why the Book of Enoch devoted so much attention to the sun, the moon, and the stars. Not to satisfy human curiosity, but to remind readers that there is a greater order governing creation. One that existed long before us, and will remain long after us. This perspective also helps explain why the astronomical book continues to fascinate modern readers. Some approach it looking for hidden technology. Others search for evidence of forgotten science. Still others read it as symbolic theology. Each reader brings different expectations. But whatever conclusion one reaches, the text itself continues asking the same question it asked more than 2,000 years ago. If creation moves with such remarkable order, what does that reveal about its Creator? Perhaps that is the real mystery. Not whether the moon hides secret chambers, or whether ancient people possessed forgotten technology. But why has humanity always looked into the night sky, searching for meaning? The Book of Enoch invites us to do exactly that. Not by abandoning careful investigation, but by paying close attention to one of the oldest witnesses we possess. And whether you agree with every interpretation or not, that invitation is still worth accepting. As we've seen throughout this investigation, the Book of Enoch contains one of the most detailed descriptions of the heavens preserved from the ancient Jewish world. Its language is unfamiliar. Its imagery is vivid. Its worldview is different from our own. Yet it offers a remarkable window into how one ancient community understood time, creation, and the order of the cosmos. Perhaps its greatest value isn't that it answers every question. Perhaps its greatest value is that it encourages us to keep asking better ones. If today's investigation changed the way you think about the Book of Enoch, you'll enjoy my new ebook, The Watchers and the Flood, where we explore Genesis 6, the Book of Enoch, and the world behind these ancient texts in much greater depth. You'll find the link in the description and the pinned comment. And if you're passionate about biblical history, ancient manuscripts, archaeology, and forgotten civilizations, consider subscribing to the 9th tablet. Every week, we investigate the earliest sources, not to tell you what to think, but to explore what they actually say. Until our next investigation, Keep searching. Keep studying. And let the evidence speak.